Welcome everyone on this very cold and very winter evening in beautiful Deerfield. My name is Emily Gaylord. I'm part of Engaged Deerfield. I also serve as vice chair on your planning board. I chair your local cultural council. I am clerk of Engaged Deerfield, which means I take very fastidious and very chaotic minutes. And I missed the meeting where they decided who would MC, and thus here I am emceeing this event. Go on. So a little bit quickly about Engaged Deerfield. We are a citizen group dedicated to channeling community interests into action. People are very interested in taxes, it turns out, so that's why we are kicking off with this conversation. We also produce the Deerfield Currents newsletter. You can take those home with you. They are on this table over there, and if you are not yet subscribed, we definitely encourage you to do so. Lots of feel-good news about our amazing town. Some quick housekeeping notes. There's snacks. Please eat the snacks. There's cider, there's seltzer, there's some hot tea. Bathrooms are, if you go down this hall, they're in that kind of lobby area. And this is supposed to feel like a conversation, so don't feel like you have to raise your hand to go to the bathroom. You are all adults. Just go take care of your business. Some quick thank yous. FCAT is here, which is so amazing. Thank you so much for being here. They're an incredible local resource. We're so lucky to have them. The Deerfield Community Center, this space is incredible. We really love being here, so we are so appreciative of that. The Pecumtuck Valley Memorial Association, if anyone parked there, thank you to them. Julie Chalfont and Brenda Hill, who are going to be here ready to answer questions, and many others as well. And with that, I do want to say in gratitude that because this is such a lofty, heavy topic, we are so lucky to have some local expertise willing to speak to us. For those of you who don't know, which you really should, Julie is chair of the Finance Committee and chair of the Town and Building Advisory Committee since it started in 2018. And she has offered very generously to kind of take us through the municipal budget process. Brenda Hill is also here. I saw her come in. Our town accountant, who has been there for a little over 11 years, and you're retiring this year. Is that right? Some other call-outs. Kathy Sylvester is here. She's the chair of the Community Preservation Committee. Can you just wave? I'm sorry. I know. All right, Lee Dwight is here, who's chair of Ad Hoc Senior Housing Committee and member of the CPC and Connecting Community Initiative. I think our entire select board is here. Tim Hilchey, McDaniel, and Blake Gilmore are all in attendance. Thank you for coming. I don't think I saw Mark, so you can all tell Mark Brennan, where were you? You were not conversing with us. And I just wanted to say a shout out to Julie, who did so much work on these slides, Denise Mason, who unfortunately is sick tonight, but she helped quite a bit as well to get us going. And with that, can we give Julie just the warmest, most happy welcome to talk about
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
There are several current and former Finance Committee members here, and there's several current and former Select Board members here, and our town accountant is here. So there's plenty of people to keep me honest as we go through. But what we're going to talk about, hey look, I have an agenda. So we're going to talk about, I'm going to start with the budget, then I'm going to talk about Prop 2.5. The budget is going to be a very quick overview just to get us all on the same page. Then I'm going to really get into the budget process and the players, and then we have a couple odds and ends, the Community Preservation Act and the school funding. Hopefully everybody has cards, so as you come up with questions as we go through, keep them, and then we have, I think, probably plenty of time for a Q&A. So to start, this budget is the FY25 budget, which is the year we are in right now. And I just put this up here to give us a feel for what the different pieces of the budget are for. This group, I think, is pretty well informed, but I'm going to go through it anyway, sorry. So there's really two pieces to it. There's the recurring expenses, which is the major part of it, and then there's non-recurring expenses, which are capital items, one-time expenses that we have. If you kind of go around the circle, Education, this year is 63% of the budget. That's the full education expense, including benefits for the people, for the teachers and everything. Then as we work our way around the circle, general government, those are all the people who are kind of in town hall, if you think of that group. Public safety is mainly our police, but also our inspections department. Public works is the highway department. This is non-school benefits, about 5%. If you add the school benefits to that, it comes up to, I think, 11, somewhere around there, 10, 11%, something like that. Debt service is 3%. South County EMS is 2%. Culture and rec, that's the library and the rec department, 2%. And then human services, like Board of Health, is 1%. Couple of notes, there's no fire department in there. That's because the fire department and the water are separate. They are own districts. So they are not part of this municipal budgeting process. They have their own budget, they have their own district, and they vote on it. The bills come in that same envelope when you get your tax bill because our town folks administer that, but it's actually a separate budget. It's not part of the budget that you vote at town hall. You probably all know that. Sewer's not on here because sewer is an enterprise fund. What an enterprise fund, the way an enterprise fund works is that they charge for their services, and the charges for their services should cover all of their expenses. So the Finance Committee does go through and review the sewer budget, but it doesn't show up here because it doesn't come from basically our assessed taxes. It's a separate enterprise fund. South County EMS is actually an enterprise fund also. And most of their expenses are covered by revenues, but not all, because we, as the 3 towns together in South County EMS, have decided that we want a little more service than can be paid for just through the revenues that they get. So that's why South County EMS is on here. Their budget is actually much larger than that little 2% slice looks like. Where do we come up with the money to pay for all this stuff? 75% of it is property taxes. Property taxes, if you break that down, 76% of that 75% is residential property taxes. The remainder is commercial, industrial, and personal property. Then we have local receipts at 10%. That's things like your motor vehicle excise tax, meals and lodging, building permits, all that kind of stuff. State aid is the money that the state gives to the towns for specific purposes. That's at 9%. Free cash is at 5%. Free cash is kind of a funny name. It's not free. What it is basically, if you think about it, is kind of the balance in your checkbook at the end of the year every year. If you look at the past year, any revenues beyond what we estimated we thought the revenues were going to be, mainly in this area, this local receipts area, go into that amount. And then anything we budgeted, if we didn't spend everything that we budgeted, that little bit of excess goes into this account. And that's where free cash comes from.
I have a question about the state.
Yeah.
Is the state money, is that for the schools or is it for a variety of things?
Most of it's for the schools, but there's some other. Brenda, do you have any comments?
Unrestricted, there's unrestricted government aid. They also give us money for property that the state owns to kind of supplement the taxes. Those are probably the 3 biggest things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so the next topic is Prop 2.5. Proposition 2.5, there's basically 2 pieces to Proposition 2.5, 2 things that it does. One thing it does is it places a levy ceiling. It says the most property taxes you can levy is 2.5% of the total assessed value. So that says your maximum tax rate can be $25. Right now our tax rate is what, 13 point something? 13.25, yeah. So we are well below that limit. That is a hard limit. There is no changing it. There is no exceeding it. If you hit that $25, that's it. You're cutting your budget because there is no more. There is no way to go beyond that. There are no exceptions. That's one half of it. The other half of it is what everybody thinks of when you think of Prop 2.5. And what that piece says is that the total property tax levy cannot increase more than 2.5% from year to year. There's some exceptions to that. You take that and you add new growth. So if you have new buildings, new houses, whatever in your town, the taxes the property tax against those new properties can be added to it. And then you can also vote to override it. And there's two ways that you can exceed that Prop 2.5 thing. One is an exclusion, the other is an override. An exclusion, you say, for this specific capital project, I want to exclude this money from that Prop 2.5 limit, right? So we have voted that, the highway garage, the wastewater treatment plant, and the library, we all voted that we would exclude those debts from that Prop 2.5 limit. That is a temporary increase only for the life of the loan, and it does not compound. You don't get 2.5% more every year as that goes on, right? You just say, for this purpose, I'm gonna exclude it. When we're done, it goes away, and we don't have to worry about it anymore. You can also do what's called an override. An override says, the taxes, we are not able to cover the services that we want to cover with the taxes that we are getting. We want to increase this year beyond that 2.5%. That's a permanent increase. That means next year you get 2.5% on top of that, right? It just keeps compounding and going on. You're just raising that limit for 1 year and it continues on. That's a permanent thing. You guys are with me? More or less, yeah? Good. Okay. There are 2 steps to making this happen. It has to pass at town meeting and it has to pass in the ballot for voting. 2 steps for both of these, exclusion or override, either one. I'm going to take you through an example. So this is from FY24 to FY25, so last year to the year that we're in. So in FY24, our levy, not including the extra we borrowed for our debt, was $13,316,510. So I take 2.5% of that, $332,000. That's how much I can increase my taxes this year, the total taxes that I take. Then we estimated new growth. We looked at where we thought new buildings were going to be coming in, and we estimated that the taxes we would receive from that new growth would be another $150,000. So that takes us up to $13,799,423. Then we said, the debt we're going to pay back, the service on the debt that we have outstanding on our wastewater treatment plant and our highway garage is going to be $621,000. So this is our total levy, $14,421,000. Right? That's a 2.91% increase over FY24. So you can see that exceeds 2.5%. So the next question is, I think one thing I didn't say on this slide here. Prop 2.5 does not mean that my property taxes on my piece of property cannot go up more than 2.5%. Prop 2.5 says that the town as a whole from all the properties cannot increase more than 2.5%. So if we get down here, this 2.91%, if my house assessment increased more rapidly than the assessment of the other properties in town, then my taxes are going to go up faster than 2.91%. If my assessment didn't go up more than everybody else, then it wouldn't go up that much. You guys are with me? I'm getting nods. Beautiful. We will move on. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about Prop 2.5 unless somebody has more questions. So here's the budget process. I'm just going to run through how we approach putting the budget together and voting on it the whole way through town meeting. So we start with some planning. I drag the poor finance committee through this every year, but we sit there and we spend probably 2 solid meetings talking about financial indicators. And what we do is we look at the trends over the past 10 years of what's going on in Deerfield. What are our revenues? What was state aid? What are the tax bills doing? We have something called the average single-family tax bill that looks at, what it is what it is. All right. Operating expenditures, personnel costs, population, what our reserves are. We look at all of that just to sort of provide a background so that when we go through and talk about all this budget stuff, we've got this in the back of the mind, what's going on in the town financially. We also do comparisons within Massachusetts. We look at our revenues, our expenditures, and our tax bills compared to all the other towns in Franklin County, all the towns in Western Mass, all the towns in all of Mass, and then we also pick out comparable sized towns, so we look at other towns that are about the same population, maybe between 4,000 and 6,000 people, and compare to that. And that gives us, like I said, a backdrop to think about when we go into the budget process. When we actually start the budget process, Brenda pulls most of this together, so she gives us an estimate of what the levy is gonna, what our total revenues will be for the upcoming year. The tax levy is from Prop 2.5, we just went through how you figure that out. State aid, the state actually provides us an estimate early in the year. That gets revised as they go through their budgeting process, but we do have an estimate kind of early on. Brenda puts together an estimate of local receipts. She looks at the previous 5 years of local receipts and then takes into account things like changes in the fees and the rates and whatever else is going on in town, provides us an estimate of that. We look at other funding sources similarly, looking at what's happened in previous years. And then free cash is certified in the fall. And so we know in the fall what our free cash is going to be. So last September or something, we got the certification of free cash. We spent some of it at fall town meeting. The rest of it is available for the upcoming budget, and we retain some of it for future years. The other thing that happens is capital planning. So through the capital planning process, the capital needs in the towns are identified and prioritized and scheduled for acquisition. I can read my slide too. But what happens is all of the department heads and anybody else who has capital needs coming up submits to the Capital Improvement Planning Committee their estimate of what this year, but also the upcoming several years, any project you see coming in 5 years, we're supposed to be submitting to the Capital Improvement Planning Committee. They have a solid 5-year plan for capital improvements. They're working towards putting a 15-year plan together. And then the Town Building Advisory Committee recently put together like a 20, okay, it's very draft, but we at least started putting together a 20-year building maintenance plan. And the idea is that then we can look at the capital improvements coming for the next, 20 years.
Can you tell us what a capital improvement is, please?
A capital improvement is a non-recurring expense that is over $10,000. So it is like a new piece of equipment or a major renovation of a building or a new building.
Over 10,000 is.
Over 10, our limit for the CIPC is anything over $10,000 and is non-recurring. And the reason I say the non-recurring thing is that we buy a police cruiser every year. It costs more than $10,000, but we do it every year. And they got tired of talking about it every year. Yeah, we're gonna buy it, okay. So they added the non-recurring thing to the description. And that's actually in our bylaws, in the town bylaws, describes that. Okay, so obviously those requests fluctuate. Next year we might be wanting to buy, I don't know these things, but a $500,000 excavator, and the next year it's, a $15,000 pickup truck. So that number is going to go up and down a lot. So we have a capital stabilization fund. The idea behind the capital stabilization fund is you plan out, you look at your next 20 years of purchases, and you say, on average, we're going to spend $300,000 a year. This year, we're only spending $200,000. I'm going to put $100,000 in the capital stabilization. Next year, I'm going to use that for the different thing, and you sort of level out that thing. So you put the same amount into the capital stabilization fund. That is the concept. We have not been disciplined about funding the capital stabilization fund. So we put some in, and then we used it all, and we're not so. But that we have a plan. We are working towards the plan. We'll see if we get there. All right, I think that's it. So the CIPC. So the CIPC takes the Capital Improvement Planning Committee, takes all of these inputs, looks at them, and for every year they prioritize those requests. And they have a given, you can tell me better than I can. I don't remember what they are, but like the number one priority is stuff that's already ongoing that we're continuing the project. Number two is like safety and life and limb things. Number three, so they have a prioritization. They prioritize all this, and they give us this lovely list that's so well organized that says, work your way down. And then they also look at sources of funding and how you're going to fund those. So it may be that we actually end up doing priority number 5 instead of priority number 4, because number 5 has a funding source to it that we have money available and number 4 doesn't or something, I don't know. But for the most part, they work through that process and provide it to the finance committee, and we go through it. All right, so that's capital. So that's all planning. The next thing that happens is the select board issues to all of the departments budgetary guidelines. And they say, when you're putting your budget together for the upcoming year, I want you to A, B, or C. A, give me a level service budget. You're gonna do the exact same thing next year you did this year. Tell me how much it's gonna cost to do that. B, give me a level budget. It means you get the same number of dollars next year as you do this year, which means you're gonna cut something. What are you gonna cut? Option C is either increase or decrease by some percentage. Every year I've done it, it's been a level service budget. That's generally what we do. And then even though we say level service budget, often the departments will come in and say, here's my level service budget, here's the extra thing I want to do, and this is what that extra money would buy you. And they make the argument for why you think we should do this new thing, and sometimes we do and sometimes we don't. Also at this point, all of the salaries are going to increase. Many people are on a classification compensation plan, which is a plan that's laid out that says every year you'll get a step increase of a certain percentage. And then the personnel board looks at overall, in addition to that step increase, there's a cost of living increase that is, kind of dictated by inflation. But the personnel committee recommends that, the select board approves it, and they pick a number that you're going to use. This year it's 3% that they're using. So that's for people on the class comp plan. There are also a bunch of people in town who work under a contract, not under the class comp plan. So if they're unionized, they have a union contract. The police, the highway department, the schools are all on contracts, and for some reason, all 3 of them come up for negotiation the same year every time. So this is that renegotiation year, so we have no idea what's going to happen. But once that's negotiated, then we'll have, and then for the next 2 years beyond that, you just follow whatever the contract says. All right, then all of the department heads and the committee chairs go out, they develop their budget requests for operating expenses and for capital expenses, and they submit them all to the town accountant, and the town accountant and the town administrator kind of work through that with all of the department heads, and then it gets presented to the finance committee. So the review process, this is where we are right now. The finance committee and the select board together review every line item. So the department heads come to the finance committee meetings, they present their budgets, we ask them a million questions, we deliberate, and we vote line item by line item, every line in the budget. Every time somebody comes to the meeting, I say the same thing, which is, this is the first pass, right? Because we don't know until we've gone through all the budgets what our total request is going to be, and then we look at that total request and we look at how much money we have, we bring it down to that point. And we work, generally the way it works is we say, this is where we are, this is where we need to be, here's some ideas from the finance committee, but really select board, you're the one who makes the policies that govern what we're doing in the town. You guys go cut the budget, and they do, and they, we push ideas back and forth. It's definitely a dialogue and a discussion, but at the end of the day, we have to present a balanced budget. So we go through, we revisit many of the budget line items, we see where we can adjust things to get out to that balanced budget at the end. And we also don't unilaterally just say, cut that, right? They go off, you talk with the department heads, you see, well, how can we work to get to the point we need? So it's a very discussion-rich process. And then the last thing that happens once we have that budget is we bring the budget to town meeting. Finance committee presents the budget at town meeting. Town meeting is the legislative body of the town. Town meeting votes on the budget and has the final say in the level of spending. that we do. So town meeting is it, you're the vote, you're what makes the budget happen. I put a little blurb down here. There is generally a town meeting warrant overview, typically about a week before town meeting, between a week and 2 weeks before town meeting. That's the meeting where you sit and actually, like, we present it, you can have a big discussion, you can say, what the heck is this, you know, peg, whatever, you know, what does this mean? That whole discussion, that's the place to do that. And so hopefully you will come and you will bring all your friends and discuss what is going on in the budget. Key players, select board. I'm going to talk through the responsibilities. I think many people know this, but I'm going to make you listen to me anyway. So the select board develops priorities for the town. They look at capital improvements, they look at services, a lot of they are involved in the issues and the policies throughout the year that affect the finances of the town. And they provide the leadership in that debate between, there's the trade-off, right? We want to provide good services, but we also want to keep the taxes down, and so there's a balance there, and they provide that discussion. The finance committee's role is the financial watchdog of the town. We're the check and balance, right? We are supposed to be the check and balance for financial matters. We are independent. We are actually appointed by the moderator. Select board is stuck with us. Right? You guys get to elect the moderator nominates the finance committee, and we are that independent check and balance is what our role is. By state law, we are required, and by town bylaws, but I guess state law wins, we are required to consider every municipal question as presented to town residents. When we do that through the lens of finances, because that's our sort of what we think about as a finance committee. And occasionally you'll see something come before town meeting, should we change the state flag? Like, have at it, you know? It's like, finance committee has no opinion because there's no, I don't know what, significant financial impact to the town. Most things have a financial impact to the town, so most things we deliberate and discuss and make a recommendation to a town. But our role is advise and make recommendations to the town through that fiscal watchdog perspective. The assessors are the ones who come up with the full and fair market valuation of all the property in town, real and personal property. They maintain the up-to-date property values. They calculate new growth for the tax levy, and they recommend the tax rate that then gets approved by the select.
They're to blame for everything.
And who are they and how are they?
Very good workers.
What do they have?
They're elected.
They're elected.
They are elected, yeah.
Great job.
Yeah, they're a hardworking group, and they actually, so we hire a professional assessor company that does the assessments for a lot of the things in town. Patriot Properties,
Yes.
is that what they're called? But the assessors themselves are actually they're elected, then they have to get qualified. So there's a coursework and certification that they have to go through within some period of getting elected. I don't know how long that is.
2 years.
2 years?
How many are there?
3. Yep. So they actually go out and do assessments of some, like this, I think the personal property, they actually do the assessments for.
So I don't understand how the assessors recommend the tax rate when the finance committee knows what, and the select board knows what the budget is. Can you explain that interrelationship?
Possibly.
You might be-
And I might be, okay, so the question is why do the assessors recommend the tax rate when everybody else is involved in how much we're spending? I'm gonna answer this and then you can fix it. But in my opinion, it's not particularly challenging, because what you do is you take the budget and you take the assessed value of the property in town and you divide one by the other, and that's the tax rate.
So they have the budget, they don't do that until after you all.
Right. Yeah, that doesn't happen until the summer sometime, right? We do town meeting in April, they do recommend the tax rate after town meeting.
Fall, yeah.
It's in the fall, so it's after all of the assessments are done and they know what their equalized value is to apply the tax rate to. But they don't do anything in a vacuum. You know, this all goes into DOR website. I plug in the budget, I plug in the local receipts, the assessors plug in the values, and it all kind of comes together. Does that make sense? Yeah.
They're the ones who have the handle on what the assessed value, what our equalized value is for the full town, which is why they're the ones that are responsible for that. Yeah. And then our wonderful town accountant and budget director does a huge amount of work, but she coordinates all the financial activities of the town, develops financial policies and practices, maintains our accounting system, and does the accounting for everything that we spend in town, not only our municipal budget, but all the grants we get, all the schools, everything, right? She's responsible for all of that. She is also responsible for developing the budget. She drafts that budget that we all review and presents us to. It's a huge amount of work. And as somebody said, we are losing Brenda. I'm very unhappy that she's decided to retire, but she's retiring, and there's an ad out right now for a new accountant and budget director, and working towards getting somebody on board. So hopefully that person can be with us through at least part of the budget review process, through town meeting, and then starting the new year. A couple other little topics. Community Preservation Act. The Community Preservation Act was passed into Massachusetts law in 2000. Deerfield adopted it in 2007. These are funds. It's a surcharge on the property taxes. So what you do is you take your tax bill, you subtract off the taxes on the first $100,000 of your property, and then 3% of those taxes. So 3% of the less than 2.5% is what goes into the CPA funds, right? There is an exemption possible for low-income households. I don't know how that works, but Lily does, if you have questions about it.
Happy does.
And then the state matches that. And they have promised that they will match somewhere between 5 and 100%. But like in 2023, we did get the 100%. 2024, it was 61%. It varies year to year depending on how the state's finances are doing. But we do get matching funds from the state that we would not get if we didn't vote for this. Those funds can be used only for 4 specific things: preserving open space, preserving historic sites, creating affordable housing, and developing outdoor recreational facilities. That's it. You can't spend it on your police department or, whatever. It's only for those purposes. It's not just municipal, so like companies out in town, like Historic Deerfield could apply to, maintain something historic in town. And we have occasionally cemeteries. We did the steps on the old brick church here in Old Deerfield. The 1888 building, that refurbishment, the part that refurbishes the old building, is under CPA. New playground at the elementary school with CPA. That's outdoor recreational facilities. So there's a wide range of things that can be done.
Civil War monument.
Civil War monument. Huh?
Senior housing?
Senior housing. Yeah.
Yeah, property. Before the state match, can you tell us what the approximate dollar figure is that is set aside for this every year?
Brenda, do you know off the top of your head?
You're wondering what we collect?
Yeah, how much?
It's usually about 300,000. That's been pretty consistent.
It would be because our, Yep.
Any chance you know what percentage was used actually for private rather than public projects?
Very little.
Very little.
Very little.
fair enough.
Yeah.
What was the question?
What percent of what we have spent from CPA funding, what percentage of that was for private instead of public projects? I don't know the percentage, but it's been pretty small.
But even private ones have to have a public benefit, and the public has to be able to access it, so,
The steps.
No, I'm aware, I'm just curious what. the
yeah,
percentage
yeah,
is.
so I'm just saying that even if it's a private ownership, then there has to be public access.
Cindy, have you guys looked at how much,
Oh,
what
I
the
can only
percentage
think
was
of
private
like
versus
the
public?
steps were 20,000 or something like that, if that.
Yeah.
Less than that,
10.
less than
Yeah,
10,
what is
yeah.
Yeah, and the statute was, what, 10 or 15?
Yeah, because
Statute.
DA partnered with that.
And it was 500,000 for senior housing and 4 million or so, 3.7 million for the 1888 building, so it's pretty small compared to what we've done for the public. The other topic's the school budget. I don't know if do you guys want the nitty gritty of this? I can blabber on forever.
Blabber.
Go for it.
Yeah.
We're going for it, all right.
That's what we're here for.
As a reminder, last year, 63% was education when we moved those benefits, and so it's completed the benefits and everything. So what does that pay for? We have 4 schools that we support: Deerfield Elementary School, Frontier Regional School, Franklin Tech, and Smith Folk. Deerfield Elementary School is obviously 100% Deerfield because it's only Deerfield. Frontier Regional, what we pay is a percentage of the total bill based on a rolling 5-year average of enrollment. So it's strictly the number of kids we have there as compared to the number of kids that Conway, Whately, and Sunderland have. Strictly number of kids. Franklin Tech has, I think, 14, what they tell us, 14 member schools, member
Yeah.
towns?
19.
19 member towns.
Yeah.
It's huge, right? They try to keep their increase 3% or less. The increase that the towns pay, 3% or less. The amount we pay is a combination of the number of students and a calculation of how rich we are, right? It's a combination of our assessed value, our total assessed value of the property in town, and the average, the per capita income
Yeah.
is what it is. So they take all the income in the town divided by the number of people in town, and that's the value that they use. And so we actually end up paying one of the higher rates per student, and then it's completely per student. Last year, we had 35 kids. We were paying, I don't know, 17, 18,000
Yeah.
per kid, something like that. Uh-huh.
Julie, when you calculate the number of students, does that include the school choice children, or is it just? the
No, this is
resident-
Franklin Tech
Oh, but when you were saying about the calculations, you.
at
know,
Frontier Regional.
Like Frontier has over 150 kids that are maybe school choice.
Right.
So my question is the total number that, whatever number you go by, does it include school choice or does it not include school choice?
It just,
It does not
Does not.
include school choice. So here's what I think you're asking. Say Deerfield Elementary, for example, has around 16% school choice kids. Those kids, because they went to Deerfield Elementary, move up to Frontier, right? They're not our responsibility. The percentage of Frontier that we pay is the number of kids from Deerfield, ignoring those. So Whately Elementary might have 50% of their kids are school choice. 50% go up, they don't pay for that 50%, they pay for the Whately kids that are there. Was that your question?
And the money from those
Okay.
kids from other towns comes from where?
send it down.
It comes from those towns, from the sending towns.
Just 5,000.
It's only $5,000 per kid. Plus, if they're a special ed kid, the special ed, what it costs for their special ed is also charged back to the sending town.
Are
Yep.
they reformulating the state formula for A2 regional districts? I heard a rumor that that was in the works.
They are, yes.
Looking at that.
repeat the question?
Sure. The question was, are they reformulating? No. So hang on. Let's hold that question for just a minute. Let me talk about this for a second, and then we'll come back to it, okay? Let's go back to this foundation budget business. So we're gonna hold that. I'm gonna talk about one other thing first. I'm gonna finish this list first. Deerfield, Frontier, Franklin Tech, we talked about how it works. Smith Voc, we are not a member of Smith Voc. We do send a couple of kids to Smith Voc. They can only go to Smith Voc if the program they want is not offered at Franklin Tech. We pay the full per pupil cost plus transportation to Smith Voc. It's pretty expensive per kid. But there were like 2 last year and 1 year before or something like that. Yep.
I'd like to know if you know how many of our nonprofits like Deerfield Academy, Eagle Brook, etc., how many of their students come to our school? I start with the elementary school. Any idea what percentages?
I don't know that.
I feel like between 30
Does
and 40,
anybody
yeah.
else know? So the question is, how many children of people who live at Deerfield Academy and Eagle Brook?
Yeah, how much it costs us to educate their kids?
It's about 18,000, well, 14,000 in the elementary, 18,000 in the high schools, and we probably, in the elementary school, there might be 30 or 40, or there might be 30 or 40 kids.
So what's the math there?
Consistently, there've been over 40 kids.
Yeah,
Between 40 and 50 kids.
I haven't done the math, but it's a lot.
Okay, so we restated the question, so the answer is that it's we think it's about 40-ish kids, plus or minus, maybe as many as 50, it depends on the year. And the elementary schools are around 14,000 per
Roughly.
student, and the high school is higher, maybe 18,000
So
per
the
student.
second part of this question is, how much do they pay us for educating their kids?
None.
They don't pay anything specifically for educating the kids. They do give a payment in lieu of taxes to the town each year.
Yeah.
That is pretty much at their discretion. That's the word I'm looking for. Yep.
And when they're living at the school, they're not paying downtown taxes.
What's your question?
Right. When they live at the school, they do not pay taxes. If they're in housing at the school, if they don't own their house, they're not paying taxes to the town. Other than, I guess, motor vehicle excise taxes, and if they happen to go eat a Gianni Figs or something, right?
Right, so we're basically covering them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a service you provide as a town, right?
One thing I would like to say is that I wrote a letter to the CFO and the head of school of DA and asked them if they would be willing to help defray the cost of educating their children. So we are in discussions with them about this question.
So to restate, yeah, so, oh, good.
Say that again.
So in November, I wrote a letter to the CFO and the head of school and copied in the heads of school of Bement and Eagle Brook, explaining the situation and saying that in light of the fact that you recently allowed people who have less than $150,000 of income who are American citizens to come to your school for no tuition, would you be willing to discuss helping defray the cost of educating staff, members, children in our public schools? I've had a couple of meetings with the CFO. Nothing has really come of it at this point, but he has promised to provide a list of all of the benefits that DA provides to the town, which might include 40 school trips that are arranged and paid for and transported on DA buses, etc. The last meeting I had was in December, and I haven't received that information yet. So it's certainly a component of pilot that we're looking at, and we'd like an answer.
So the way school funding, let's hold questions just for a second. The way school funding works, there is something called a foundation budget. It is required spending per Mass General Law. This is how much you have to spend on kids in your school. It's per pupil, and then there's, it depends on the age, not the age, the grade, right? So it says every kindergarten through 5th grader you have to pay so many dollars per student. Every high school student you have to pay so many dollars per student. And then there are add-ons to that for special needs, for English language learners, for low-income kids. There's several other categories. So they look at, Deerfield Elementary, you have so many children, this many of them are English language learners, this many of them are special needs, and they come up with that dollar value, and they say, Deerfield, you have to spend X amount of money on educating your kids in Deerfield Elementary School. Same for the high school, same for Franklin Tech. Many communities spend more than that, we spend more than that, but that is what's called the foundation budget. Of the foundation budget, state aid pays some percentage of that. They pay a minimum of 17.5% of that. They pay more than that depending on your total assessed value in your town and your income, the income per capita in your town, right? And there's an equation that comes up with that and tells you how much money the state is going to give you. There's something called hold harmless. If you have declining enrollment, which we have, they will not pay you less than they paid you last year. They will pay you as much as they paid you last year, plus a guaranteed whopping $30 per student over the whole harmless amount. This year they actually voted $65. So sometimes they increase it, but what they're mandated by law is $30 per student over that hold harmless amount. There are a lot of towns in the state who are in this hold harmless position. I don't remember the number. It's like half the towns.
Yeah,
I mean,
at
it's a
least.
lot of the towns are in that position, are in this hold harmless position. I forgot your question, but I wanted to say this, and then we were going to answer the
The
question.
regional school districts get a different formula for
Right,
compensation.
so the formula that they are changing is this formula, the how much state aid they give you, right? They're not changing, so the formula that Frontier figures out, like that rolling 5-year average, that was the agreement that the 4 towns came to when we set up Frontier Regional. And so the state's not changing that, that was our agreement.
But the rate at which compensation comes back to regional districts, it's been complained against because we have enormous transportation costs that other municipalities
Right.
and other smaller districts don't.
Right.
I thought that was being considered.
That is absolutely being discussed. So there is a rural school aid bill being discussed. I don't, somebody else, Trevor, you were in that
Natalie Blay is
meeting.
working on that for sure, and that was a big discussion down at MMA this last week, the conference for
Do you have the,
municipal.
who has the microphone?
Oh.
Yes, that was a large topic at MMA, which is the Municipal Associations Conference down in Boston last week. It was a very depressing seminar on the cost of public education and how fast it's rising. But yes, they are looking, and they recognize, and they are looking at the foundation budget and how to help rural schools, and there has been some help for rural schools lately. Natalie Blay is championing that along with Joe Comerford, and they've been making headway, and hopefully we'll do more. So, should be coming shortly.
Nothing's been passed yet, right? There's bills proposed.
There has been some help for rural schools aid that we have gotten over the last year or two, but it hasn't been guaranteed.
We have to get it every year.
Yeah, and then so we're hoping that, they're gonna look at that and extend it, but there's a lot more work to be done for rural schools because there is a lot more cost in transportation and everything else.
The goal is 63 million. We got 10 million 2 years ago, we got 17 million last year. And obviously, we're trying to get more every year. We're, work on it with Natalie and Joe.
I have a question about the how state aid is determined by pupil enrollment, that's clear, but taxation effort? And
So-
wealth.
That's the words that, I don't know where I got those. Some website. But what it is total assessed value and per capita income. So what they do, oh gosh, you're gonna hold me to this if I tell you. This is what I think they do, it's pretty close anyway to what they do. They say, this is how much money I have to spend on schools in Massachusetts, in all of Massachusetts this year. They take that dollar value, half of it goes to assessed value, half of it goes to income. They then divide the amount they have for assessed value by the total of assessed value in the entire state. And they say, we are going to give you 1.2% of your assessed value. And then you add up your, or whatever. That's not quite right, because you get more if you had assessed value. It's something like that. They look at it across the entire state and they come up with a percentage. How do they do this? Oh, I know how to do that. Take the total amount they have. I've lost it.
See
I
why
can't do
it can be
it.
redone?
They subtract it, so it works reverse of that, but that's essentially what they do. They divide that by the assessed value. It's gotta be like 1 minus that somehow to make the math work, right? And then they do the same thing for income, and what they do is they come up with a percent. Maybe this is the percent that you pay. A percent of your assessed value, it is. It's a percentage of your assessed value you're required to pay. It's a percent of your total income in your town that you're required to pay. You add the two of those together. If it is more than 82.5% of your budget, you only required to pay 82.5% because they guarantee they'll pay you. If it's less than that, they pay down.
Okay,
Does
so.
that make sense? Did I get that
Yes,
in the end?
I think I got it. So then, excuse me, our wealth is assessed in a way that includes the income of the people who work for the nonprofits.
No.
So
Or not.
it does, but the select board has gone to the state and made exactly that argument, and they subtract off. So we also have, there's some people who live in Whately who have our zip code, right? So it subtracts off those people and the people who live within DA and Eagle Brook. I mean,
But not taxed.
That takes a ton
So-
of work each year by the select
It
board and
does.
our town
Yeah.
administrator, and a couple of boxes of Richardson's chocolate to get delivered to the DOR. I mean, it's not easy, it's not an easy formula, but it takes a lot of
So it
effort.
is not a set recognized exclusion. It is
Right.
something that the select board has to go and lobby for every year.
although I
What
just saw
happened
something.
what happened is give her a mic.
What happened when they did the new formula, the 01342 zip code was the 14th wealthiest zip code in the state. And Skip was the one, he and I went to a webinar, or, a seminar kind of thing. And it flipped me out because that was going to make sure that we lost like $300,000 or $400,000 the next year. So when we went to the MMA conference, I went to the DOR booth and I just sat there and talked to them and begged them to say that this is not fair. So literally, they agreed that if we gave them a list of all the properties of the nonprofits, they would manually remove the income from that property. And they have been doing that for, 8 or 9 years. But you have to go every year, you have to bring, thank you, you're so nice to do this for us. But it's 300 or 400 or 500,000 now, I don't know what it is. We don't really know because it's just rolled in. And then the last couple years, after begging them, like the Ninja Turtle people or the, in our zip code and stuff like that. It was like, oh my God, that's a third of our 01373 zip code is Whately. So we got them to pull the income on the Whately addresses. And so you have to go to the post office and see if there's any new houses that are built in the area. And you go down and you say, here are the new house that was added in Whately. Please make sure you pull that income from us. And it has really made a huge difference. I mean, no one really sees it, but
It's a lot of work.
it's just a lot of being nice and hanging out. Making sure you see them in the ear.
Thank you, Carol.
And just to clarify, MMA, Massachusetts Municipal Association,
Yes.
not chair fighting?
Not chair fighting.
Okay.
Although it feels like it.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
So that's all the prepared remarks I had. I'll just add a couple things. There's an incredible amount of data available on the DLS, the Massachusetts Division of Local Services website. You can go, you can look at, and they have sort of prepackaged comparisons between towns and historical data and stuff. There's all sorts of stuff there. Also, if you have questions or comments about things, feel free to email me and we'll reach out. And you should, if you have opinions, come to finance committee meetings, come to select board meetings, write us emails, let us know what you're thinking. Because otherwise we just operate on what we know and think. So,
Thank you, Julie.
We're still open to Q&A if there's more questions. Go ahead.
So I have a question about, especially with capital improvements, how do grant funds find their way into the budget?
So any capital improvement, regardless of the source of funding that's over $10,000, is supposed to go through the CIPC. It's a lot easier to get it approved if you come and show up with grant funding that covers most of what's there. But if it's under $10,000, it doesn't have to go to CIPC, and you can get a grant and just follow the process and do it. But if it's over $10,000, you are supposed to go through CIPC and get that approved.
So part of my question or comment is that there's a lot of grant funding that this town brings in.
Right.
And it's brought in by staff, but it's also brought in by volunteers.
Yes.
And that's not completely reflected in the budget, is it?
It does not show up in the budget that we present. Brenda, you look like
No, it wouldn't be in your budget. It's completely separate. Each grant has its own set of accounting, if that makes sense. It's also a lot of work.
Yes.
So be careful when you're looking for grants.
Yeah.
Well aware, I serve on the Open Space Committee. We're writing a grant application as we speak. So part of what I'm hoping people understand is, yes, there's the budget, but then there's other funds that are brought in to the town.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Can I quickly, sorry, so did everyone get a piece of, like a little cardstock when you came in? So this is not by any means to impede discussion. It is in fact to facilitate it. So please feel free to keep asking questions, but we'd like to collect those cards, and that way we can kind of rapid fire at Julie, knowing that it's already after 8 o'clock. And certainly ask follow-up questions. Keep your beautiful Engaged Deerfield pencil that Annette hand sharpened, all of them. She's amazing. So if maybe we can all pass them to the center aisle, I'll just come by and collect them. But certainly keep asking questions. This is great. And Julie, you're amazing. Thank you for doing this for us.
I have a question.
Hang on a sec.
When you were explaining the pie and where the money goes and stuff, you said the sewer was not included in that. It was an enterprise fund. But there's no town tax dollars that are going toward the sewer?
The only town tax dollars that are going towards the sewer are the capital project to build the South Deerfield wastewater treatment plant. That capital project passed several years ago. I don't remember how long ago it was. 25% of the capital funds are paid by the town. That's part of our capital exclusion. The 75% is paid by sewer users. That was the bylaw, the town bylaw when the sewer passed. So we had to do it that way per the bylaw.
It's in the pie, but it's in the debt service, so it shows
Right.
as
So,
debt service.
but in other words, it was sort of misleading though, because like the fire and water, those people that benefit from it pay a tax or they pay for it. So a lot of people in town that don't benefit for it are paying for that plant, and it is our tax dollars.
Yeah, so the argument in favor. I'm going to explain it. You can attribute this to whoever you want. The argument in favor of that percentage, like I'm on septic, right? I don't have sewer at my house, but the argument for paying for 25% of the sewer is that by having sewer in our town, we are able to have Yankee Candle and Pelican and all of those that would not be in the town. Huh? Yeah, so there's all, there, it encourages commercial, all of the industrial park is on the sewer. We also have Town Hall on the sewer, the schools are on the sewer, all of that stuff. So there is, like, you can agree or not agree, but that is the argument for that 25% coming from it. Skip, go ahead, want to respond?
Can I just say that we've had somebody from Greg's wastewater stand up and address the whole septic problem. They're running out of places to put it.
It is a problem. That absolutely, there's places that won't take it that used to be able to.
Yeah, I'm living on Beaver Drive, which was built in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And people there are having to dig up more, find more leach fields. And it's not something you can just use, environmentally it's a problem. And it's not something you can use forever into the future. And that, it has like incredible effects on our property value. If you don't have a septic system that can work and you can't get it cleaned out and brought somewhere, they're now bringing it down they're dumping it in Connecticut because they've run out of Massachusetts places, and it's gone way up, from like 300 to 500 to get it cleaned. So it's it's not just and I live half a mile from the sewer treatment.
You can do a Beaver Drive right up to
I'm right on Beaver Drive, and the only reason that they'd have to dig underneath UMass's turf farm.
Off the road.
God forbid.
So are you advocating for an expansion?
I just went and told Tim, I counted all of our homes. We have 40 residential homes in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
And we're all on septic. People are like, their homes, the ones who are like right up against Mount Sugarloaf, they had to build a drumlin to make a new leach field in their front yard.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not okay.
It's not.
And it's not being addressed.
Mike.
Go ahead, Skip.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, this 25% that those of us who are on, sounds like those of us who are on our own private sewer are paying. Well, it's really not 25% for us. It's approximately 12.5%. Because not only do sewer users have to pay their 75%, but they've got to pay just like you and I pay as part of our taxes. So it works out somewhere around 12.5%. When this first came up for a vote, I was bound and determined to say, no, to hell with it, let them worry about it. And then it was like, well, 12.5%, when you work it out that way, I guess I could live with it.
Yeah, but you can't live with a septic system that's not going to be.
No.
That's my problem.
Yeah, let me just point out one thing. So, your house was built 40 years ago.
No.
50 years ago, whatever it was, 45, 50 years ago, and you don't have sewer. The two people in front of you have a condo that was built 5 years ago. They've got sewer.
Yeah, but we pay for no sewer for a long time.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
And I'm half a mile away.
We were under.
Yeah, half a mile.
I just wanted to say, as a treasurer of the Franklin County Solid Waste District, the sewer rates that every town is paying in order to truck their sewer to Lowell, and or to have it, all the things that you have to pay a tipping fee, you have to pay, it's a phenomenal fee.
$17,000 to $18,000 every time we truck
and
it
it
down.
and it keeps on going up.
17 to 18,000 to bring our sludge down to Lowell.
And how often in a year?
Twice a month.
So
Twice a month?
And we have two sewer systems.
Figures out to about 200,000 a year.
Yeah, it's phenomenal, and every town in Franklin County pays this. What we're gonna do with our shit, excuse me, is very difficult problems for all of us.
All right, so we've kind of wandered far from the budgeting process. But the whole select board is here, so I'm sure they are taking notes and recognizing the comments. There's a couple of questions that came in just on the little sheet, so we'll quickly do those. Do we have a rainy day fund? Is that the capital stabilization fund? Yes and no. So yes, we have a rainy day fund. It is called the general stabilization fund. You can see, well, I don't know. I don't have your data here. Here we are in dollar values. So our general stabilization fund is this red one. You can see this dip down here and then comes back up. You remember the horrible floods and all of the road repairs. So we actually tapped into this capital stabilization fund, used that money for the road repairs, and then came back the next year and replenished it most of the way back up to where it was. So we do have a stabilization fund. It has, the hope is never to use it, but when we do need to use it, we do use it. The capital stabilization fund is just for taking those fluctuations out of the capital, or at least that's what we want to do. How do grants figure in the budget process? We already talked about that, right? You guys are good with that? What are cherry sheets? Cherry sheets is the it's the statement from the state of how much money they are giving out, essentially. It's called a cherry sheet because it used to be printed on pink paper, cherry colored paper. That's why it's called a cherry sheet.
Is it for schools only?
No, it's all of the money that they are giving out.
All the aid that we were talking about, the unrestricted aid, the money that they give us in lieu of taxes for property they own in town, and then the Chapter 70 for school. And then there's some for libraries. There's a small amount for libraries. There's school choice money, so on and so forth.
It changes all year. It starts, we just got it this past week when the governor put out the budget. Then the House will do a budget, the Senate will do a budget, then they'll consolidate and we'll get a final one, hopefully by June.
Usually June.
How much does inflating value of property factor in the tax assessments of residential property? I feel like we talked about this in the Prop 2.5, but what it is we do our municipal budget. We are limited to that 2.5% increase. We take that total money and we divide it by the total assessed value in town, assessed taxable property in town, and that's how much is paid. So if your assessment, if the total property assessment in the town goes up, the tax rate goes down, right? That's why we're at 13.2 whatever we are right now. Last year we were at 14 something, the year before was 15 something. That tax rate went down. Money out of your pocket did not go down, right? That's because your assessment went up. But if the assessment goes way up, the town can't take more money. They are limited to 2.5%. So actual dollar value that the town can take, it just means your tax rate went down if the assessed property went up. If your house is super fancy and your assessment went through the roof, then you're kind of out of luck, right? Your taxes are going to go up more than other people's taxes are going to go up. So, yep.
I just want to add a touch to this. New growth is one of the things that we occasionally get, and valuations went down in 2022 or 21 when Sugarloaf Estates was starting to come onto the tax rolls. 75 new houses, so the tax rate went down and valuations went up, but many people got reductions in tax for 1 or 2 years. Unfortunately, we don't have that type of growth frequently, and so that's, and everything goes up every year, of course, the expenses.
Yeah. So we've had several good years of growth. We had the Sugarloaf Estates took several years to get on, and then we had a couple big commercial, industrial projects that added to our tax roll. So we want to encourage that, right?
Yeah.
We keep wanting that those companies to come to town and build here.
Julie, my question's about assessments.
Yep.
I know that when your house is assessed, that one of the ways they determine a number is by recent sales in the community. And in Deerfield, there have been some very nice sales with over $1 million, but unfortunately, a lot of that has been through the nonprofits. And then we no longer have them on our tax rolls if that house becomes a nonprofit building. I know I went to the assessor's office and I said, well, certainly those are outliers when you do the assessments for the rest of us who are not nonprofits. And I was told they were not. And the assessors apparently at some point went to the state to explain our unique situation with these exorbitantly high sales that are happening a lot with Deerfield Academy. And they said, no, the state will not exclude those sales. They have to be included. So do you know of any way the town of Deerfield can work on that to make them become outliers so the rest of us, I mean, I know it's not the whole of an increased assessment, but it certainly is a part of it. So is there any way that the town of Deerfield can work on getting those unusual sales to be outliers rather than inclusive in the assessment process?
I do not know the answer to that at all. I don't know anything. I'm not an expert on the assessments. I'll take the note down and pass it to the assessors. But Blake, you look like you have a comment.
Well, I looked into this, and I had Christopher Dunn check on the property. Oh, sorry. I worked with...
It's on, it's on.
It's on? I worked with Christopher Dunn to find out why these new houses weren't being assessed. And apparently, if the property is connected to other property, it's part of the inlying of Deerfield Academy. As they were buying up these properties, they were attached to other properties. And I'm telling you, the maze I went through with him was pretty amazing as to how they attach to each other. And that's, again, I believe that's at the state level that allows them to do that as a nonprofit. So we looked into that. It doesn't mean that we're done with it, but it's one of those things that we're trying to figure out why we couldn't put them on the tax rolls.
I feel like there's two questions here. One is the nonprofits are expanding and buying more houses. But the other question is, if the nonprofit buys a house and pays $1 million for that house, all the other houses' assessments go up. I feel like that's a second question. That one, I don't know the answer, but I'll ask the assessors. Anybody here know the answer to that? No, okay. We'll ask the assessors and see if we can get some back to you on that.
would take to have a senior tax work-off program in Deerfield, where seniors could work off some of their tax burden.
Anybody know the answer to that? Select board and committee work?
You have to work at the sewer plant.
So there is a,
It's a good thought, for sure.
there is a program for seniors with limited income and limited resources to get their taxes abated. There's 2 programs. I looked into this like 5 years ago and I don't remember it, but there are definitely 2 programs. One is just limited income and the other one is limited income and resources, and that will reduce your property tax. And they have, like, if you go by the assessor's office, they have a little handout that describes it that is good to people who are in that situation. I think it's for seniors only, and I don't know what age you become a senior. And but there's, I mean, it's worth asking about if you do that. So there is that program. I don't know about the working off.
We can put a link to that program on the Engage Deerfield website also, if that's helpful.
Are we going to talk about the pilot program and having the 3 private schools in Deerfield pay property taxes? No, I'm not going to talk about that. But the select board can talk about it if they want to talk about that. So we might save that one and pass that along to the select board to address it. So I feel like we're getting on towards 8:30. Wow. You guys have been listening for an hour and a half, so more power to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. And I do want to just say we have amazing people working for us and in this town. And I'm just really appreciative that so many of them are here. This is where, like, you really can converse. No one's going to kick you out. Please hang out with us. Again, the snacks. Do not abandon the snacks. I'm hoping I could just really quickly, I won't name you by name, but if the engagers would just raise your hands so folks know who's on the board of Engage Deerfield, I think that would be helpful. Please come talk to us. Thank you. We do have handouts with a lot of what we discussed today, some of the terms, some of the key concepts. You're more than welcome to take one. I'm going to put it on the same table as the Deerfield Currents. Again, please reach out if you have any questions. This has been recorded. Thank you again to FCAT so that we can put this on the Engage Deerfield website and potentially on the town website as well, so that more folks have access to this information, because I think it's really valuable. I was hoping, in closing, Julie, if you could just say, town meeting's coming. What do you want people to do before town meeting?
Be engaged. So at a minimum, come to town meeting and vote. Second, just above that minimum, come to that meeting 2 weeks in advance and talk about, get informed and understand what's there. And then if you have an issue that you're interested in or worried about, let people know. So come to a select board meeting. I think almost all the select board meetings, there's the opportunity for public comment up to 2 minutes within a 20-minute period. But, if you have an issue, you can raise it and make sure it's heard. Email the finance committee if you have a question or a comment, but be engaged.
What if someone would like to join the finance?
We are chock-a-block. But so the way to get onto the finance committee is when there's an opening, you can reach out to any finance committee member, but the moderator is the one who makes the appointment, so reach out to the moderator, express your interest. And what my understanding of what he does when there is an opening is that he solicits essentially resumes, but you send a letter of your interest and your background, and then he looks at the people that are on the board and the sort of range of experience, and then he looks at the people he has to choose from and tries to pick somebody that will complement so that we have kind of a broad range. That's been my understanding. We are thankfully filled right now. We have all 7 positions filled, which is fantastic. But people rotate out pretty regularly, so it's, yeah.
Isn't the Gage Deerfield gonna have 2 more